Hello and welcome to the Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now before we get into today's video, I would like to say a huge thank you to George Wiggleworth for sending in some awesome pictures of his Tempestus sounds. I really like the colour scheme you've gone for here. The brown and green works really cool. And I know that you'll be taking these guys to a GT next weekend, so good luck, mate. I think you've got all the tools you need to deal with the pesky enemies. You've got some Dakka primes, you've got some medium punchy primes and a decent amount of infantry. So please report back, let us know how you do. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page, or you can email them to me at mordianglorytv@gmail.com. And don't worry if you're an Ogre who hasn't had his bonehead surgery yet, because there'll be a link down in the description below and the email will be down there as well. But without further ado, let's crack on with today's video. Now in today's video, guys, I'm going to be taking a look at the new Warlord traits that we can get access to as part of the Codex supplement Cadia. Now this supplement is found in the Warzone Octarius book that's been released by Games Workshop recently, Book 1, The Rising Tide. Now I have done an overview of this entire supplement, of first impressions if you will. I've done a video of that already and you'll find a link to that video at the end of this one. So if you want to get a general idea, click on that one and you see the full overview. But what we're going to be doing today is an in-depth look, break down each one of these Warlord traits and just ask some basic questions like, are they good, are they bad, are they worth it, are they situational? And then we'll be asking some sort of more important questions like, which one of these are worth taking over one in over your main Warlord traits you can find in the book, but also, are these Warlord traits worth it over another Tankage trait, like a full payload Manticore? Because my full payload Manticores are damn good. So these traits are going to have to be pretty good to beat that. So we'll go through one at a time now, each one of these new Warlord traits, and then we'll see, we'll sort of get an idea of what each one's like. So the first one is called Steel Discipline, and it's an aura. While a friendly Cadian unit is performing an action within 6 inches of this model, that unit can shoot without that action failing. Now I actually quite like this one. I think that it's definitely not situational. So the interesting thing about this trait is that it ties in quite well with a lot of the sort of actions that Guard like to do. We like to raise banners, that's a good secondary for us. We like to do Retrieve Octarius data, that's a good secondary. Now Retrieve Octarius data definitely plays more into having a Scion force, which obviously isn't as important with this one, but you can still do it with other, some outflanking units. I mean, it would be great, for example, when you think about having this Warlord trait outflanking with a bunch of Cadian command squads. By outflanking, I'm talking strategic reserves, and then being able to, do an action, raise a banner, retrieve Octarius data with those outflanking command squads, but then still being able to unleash the full firepower of that unit. Now, that is important because command squads have relatively small footprints, so being able to do that and still get the firepower is really nice. So it's a bit of a toolbox. It's one that isn't situational. You'll probably find that if you took this Warlord trait, you'd be able to use it every single game. I mean, I've got the previously described outflanking command squad for Retrieve Octarius data, but then this Cadian supplement really leans into having a traditional Guard army. We're talking waves of infantry backed up by rolling tanks, and it really pushes you into things like conscripts, the new White Shields rules, which we'll be getting to in a later video. They synergize really well with this Warlord trait, because you could have a big block of conscripts which you're able to not only do an action with, but now you're able with an officer, they lose the raw recruits ability, you're able to give them an order. So now you've got a unit of conscripts which is not only 30 man strong, which is good for buffs. You're able to do an action with them, not lose their ability for them to shoot, and still get first rank fire, second rank fire on them. Now conscripts on their own aren't that great, but when you start being able to layer buffs on top of them, and because you can take them in big squads, they're very efficient for these layers of buffs. It works really well. So I actually quite like this one. It's not top tier, but like I said, it's definitely one that if you lead into it, if you build around it, you'll tend to find that it's quite a good toolbox one. And I doubt you'd find a game that you wouldn't find use for it. Now, the next one is called Gifted Commander. After both players have deployed their armies, but before the first battle round begins, select either one Cadian vehicle unit, excluding Titanic, from your army that is in your deployment zone, or up to 3 non-Cadian vehicle units from your army that are in deployment zone, and redeploy them. If the mission uses strategic reserve rules, any of those units can be placed in strategic reserves without having to spend any additional CPs, regardless of how many units are already in strategic reserves. If both players have abilities that redeploy units, roll off. The winner chooses who redeploys their units first. Okay, I'm going to say it now. This one, despite all the praise I had for the last one, this one is probably the most powerful. Okay, because this is again a Warlord trait that you are literally going to find yourself being able to use every single game. Okay, but this one is it's got some really fun applications. Now you've got some of the more, how shall we say, wacky applications for this. You know, you can relive the glory days of 5th edition where you could outflank like a whole platoon, and you could do that with this. You could take 30 conscripts, 3 blobs of 30 conscripts, and outflank all 90 of them. You can start combining this with things like the Dagger of Tusaka, which would allow you to outflank 30 conscripts, 40 conscripts, and an officer at the same time. I mean, you can do some pretty interesting stuff with this, and you can have 120 conscripts coming in from the flank. That's actually going to really threaten an enemy's backfield. And as a pure infantry commander, this is a good Warlord trait. I've got crazy stuff I can do with this. I can do, if I see an enemy is an assault army that really wants to crush one flank before moving on to the next. As an infantry army, I tend to be a little bit, have good combat width, but not good combat concentration. I can move my big blocks of infantry out of the way, and again, it just gives me tactical flexibility. Now, what's so good about this one is that it's not just good for infantry. The last one is more infantry focused because it's typically infantry that's going to be doing actions, but this one is not just for infantry commanders. This one is really good for tanks as well. Because I can tell you now, after taking an armoured company to LGT, one of the biggest things that I found consistently was that I was unable to hide all 3 of my tank commanders. Now, if you're running Cadian, there's a really high chance you're going to be running 4 tank commanders if you include Pask. Okay, now that's going to be tricky trying to hide 4 tank commanders. I mean, I took 4 tank commanders to LGT. Sorry, I took Pask to LGT. And it was always I could hide 2 comfortably, 3 at a push. But that 4th tank commander, I could never get the angle, and my opponent would always eventually deploy something against it and blow it up if it went turn 1. With this trait, you don't have to worry about that. Either you can deploy your new tank commander on the board, and then if the enemy counter deploys it, you can just move him to another part of the deployment zone where he can't be targeted. Or if there's no good place for you to get this tank commander off the board, from being picked up turn 1, then you just go, you know what? No CP, I'm just going to put this another tank commander in reserve. I'm just going to do that. And it allows you to protect probably one of the best guard units we have going for us. Tank commanders are literally a crutch for the guard right now, and anything we can do to supplement them, to boost them, is really, really big. So the really good thing about this this Warlord trait is you can use it no matter what style of army you're going to be playing. You can use it to protect your tanks. You can use it to tactically redeploy. You can use it to conduct sweeping flanking maneuvers, all of which some of them are more traditional, big brain tactics. That's like you're redeploying your tank command and whatnot. Some of them are just crazy tactics that are fun to pull off, and against the right opponent will totally catch them off guard and win you the game, like the outflanking 90 conscripts malarkey. You don't even necessarily have to outflank 90 conscripts. You could you could talk about outflanking command squads and using the Dagger of Tusaka and being able to really get good force concentration without having to take an extra detachment of scions and being able to deep strike and stuff like that. So again, it's such a versatile Warlord trait. It's really, really good. Now the last one is Mine Like a Fortress. This is another aura one. Now, while a friendly Cadian unit is within 6 inches of this model in the enemy psychic phase, each time a model in that unit would lose a wound as a result of a mortal wound, roll a d6 on a 5+, that wound is not lost. Now, this one I think is the weakest, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad one. Now, it's a bit... this one really is one that you would pick depending on your meta. Okay, so it's situational. It's not guaranteed to come up in every single game. But the games that it does come up in, that it's relevant to, it could be game winning. Now, what we're talking about here is being able to basically just stop psychic powers. And obviously, you can't completely stop them. But when you've got an army like Thousand Suns, who are putting out an average of about 30 mortal wounds, 20 to 30 mortal wounds per turn, if you're able to cut that damage output by a third, that's really big. I mean, you're impacting on an army's fundamental thing that they need to do to make up for the fact that they're not good in every single phase. Thousand Suns aren't fantastic in every single phase. That's why they have a good psychic phase, so that they can make up for some other deficiencies. Every army works on this principle. Now, if you're able to basically kick that leg out from underneath them, then you really are causing them some trouble. Another thing to think about is that Grey Knights are looking like they're going to place to be the top third army. It's like Dark Elder top, Admech second, and then Orcs and Grey Knights are kind of battling for that third spot. Now, Grey Knights are, again, a psychic heavy army. They're going to have that ability to put out mortal wounds, although they do a lot of buffs, but they're still going to have that ability to put out mortal wounds. So if Grey Knights end up becoming a really strong tournament army, then having this up your sleeve this war trip up your sleeve is really good. Problem is that you can go to tournaments and end up not facing a psychic army. I went to LGT, and I know I'm drawing on that a lot, but it's the biggest event I've been to, and it's only like a month or so ago that I went to it. And I didn't face Admech or Drakari once, because of the way that I was placing, all those players were really doing really well. So if as guard, you can try and anticipate you're going to face Thousand Suns and Grey Knights, but if those armies end up being top tier in a big event in a super major, you might just totally miss them. They might just totally fly you by. So it's just something to be aware of. Now, in terms of how do these traits stack up against how they stack up against the normal Cadian Warlord trait that you get in the Codex. Well, I think overall these ones are better. Now, the main one in the book, in case we've all probably forgotten what the Cadian Warlord trait in the book is superior tactical training. Roll a dice each time your Warlord issues an order or tank order on a 4+. That order can affect an additional Cadian unit of the same type as the original target, e.g. like infantry or Leman Russ, within 6 inches of the Warlord. Now that itself is still a pretty good Warlord trait, but it's and again with the new fact with conscripts, you could take huge conscript armies, combine that with Creed, and end up being able to issue like 6 orders to your conscripts, and just everyone getting just an unholy amount of first rank fire, second rank fire, or an unholy amount of move. So it's not fair to totally dismiss the main book trait, okay? Because again, the main book trait really fits in well with some of the other stuff that is in this supplement. However, I would say that in terms of if I was to rank these, I'd put Gifted Commander top, I'd put Steel Discipline and Superior Tactical Training middle, and I would put Mine Like a Fortress bottom. Okay, now another big question is, how do these stack up against the generic Warlord traits that you can take in the Codex? So you've got things like Grand Strategist, Old Grudges, Implacable Determination, Draconian Disciplinarian, Bellowing Voice, and Master of Command. Well, Grand Strategist is fine, it's good for getting CP back, but of course you can offset that with Curves Aquila, so it's not essential. Old Grudges is obviously fantastic if you face something like Mortarion or whatnot, but again, I would probably say that the Cadian ones are difficult. That Old Grudges is a real swingy one. Sometimes it'll be a maze, sometimes it won't be, but I think because of that, I'm going to put it down the situational. It used to be fantastic when Knights were like dominating the meta. Now, Implacable Determination actually is really good with the new white shields. Because when your Warlord and a single friendly unit within 3 inches of them advances, they may both add 6 inches to their move characteristic for the movement phase instead of rolling a dice. Now, that pairs really well with conscripts, the new white shield conscripts, because again, you can move them, then they can advance, so they're going 12 inches, and then you can move, and they go 6 inches, and then they get to roll another d6 as part of the move. Now, I know some of you will be saying, doesn't implacable determination apply to move? It specifically doesn't. It says it applies in the movement phase. But it still means, rather than going 12 plus d6 inches, you're going to be going 12 plus 2d6 inches, you're going to be going 18 plus d6. And on a unit of conscripts, the new conscripts that we were going to be doing we're going to be doing a big video on that. I know you guys love the traditional Mordian Glory conscript videos, but on the new white shields, being able to advance at an average of 21 inches, 21.5 inches, and dump 30 obsec bodies on an objective which the enemy via various buffs is going to really struggle to do anything about. Yeah, implacable determination actually pairs really well with Cadian. Draconian disciplinarian, not that great. I mean, you could do it on a Lord Commissar, and then that would potentially help again keep these conscript bombs around, but it's fine for now. It's not that great. Bellowing voice, 3 inches to Warlord of Command. No, not great. A Master of Command is a great take-all comers one. You can do an extra order per turn. I actually really like Master of Command. I think it's really, really good when you're doing it. It's essential when you're doing like a pure infantry army. Now, how they stack up to the Cadian ones, I would say Implacable Determination is as good as these new Cadian ones, and Master of Command is okay. But I would say overall, the new Cadian ones are stronger. Overall, compared to the main coast ones, the new Cadian ones are stronger. Gifted Commander is just so helpful. So helpful. Having a redeploy of that is just really, you can't stress how helpful that's going to be. Again, and similarly with a pure infantry army as we've described. So, the last big question that I want to ask and answer is, are any of these worth more than a full payload Manticore? Worth more than a slow and purposeful tank case? And the answer is yes. Okay. Now I would argue that if you're taking, obviously you're taking a pure infantry force or infantry heavy army, no, probably you're not really going to take that into account. But if we're talking hybrid guard or guard with full payload Manticores or whatever, I would say that Steel Discipline, I would trade Steel Discipline for another tank case trait, and I would trade mine like a Fortress for another tank case trait. But I would be seriously tempted to keep Gifted Commander and to not trade it away. Okay, Gifted Command. Think of it this way: there's no point in taking an extra tank case trait if your extra tank is going to die. Do you know what is more powerful than an extra tank case trait? A whole extra tank that's living to fulfillment. That's doing an important job. That's what's more powerful. So I would say Gifted Commander is equal to a tank case trait, and it comes down to how you build your army and what you want to get out of either having got an extra full payload Manticore or slow and purposeful Leman Russ, or if you think, I'm based on like terrain packs or whatnot, if you're talking about tournaments, talking competitive, you might be like, there's not enough terrain on this board, I'm going to need Gifted Commander every single time in order to pick up one of my Russes and protect them. P.S. One thing I forgot to mention about Gifted Commander, so hopefully, if you put it down in the comment section already, fair enough. What it's really good for is, what you've got to take into account with Cadian is if you're taking the Cadian trait, you're not taking spotter details and gunnery experts. Now you can get around rerolling the random number of shots because Cadians have to pound them into dust tank order. But what you're not going to be able to get around is the fact that your Warlord, that your Demolisher cannons are only 24-inch range, which is massively disadvantageous. It's a big nerf. I think we're going to find a lot of people taking demolisher cannons on their Cadian tank commanders and struggling with them. But I think there's two ways that you can get around that, and one of them is gifted commander. Firstly, you can go into strategic reserves, or outflank as I call it, and then you can come in, much more likely to be in range that way. So it helps you get around that. But you might want your tank commander on the field of battle turn 1 and to be doing punchy stuff turn 1. If that's the case, then what you're going to want to do is to use gifted commander to keep your Leman Russ tank commander with demolisher cannon on the board. But then what you do is you hide him like way at the back, out of line of sight, in a piece of terrain, and then you go, you know what, I've got turn 1, so gifted commander, boom, I'm going to put this tank at the front of my deployment zone now, I'm going to roll forward and do some damage with him. So you've got that way of getting around it, and then a little sneak preview for one of the other videos, you've got another way of getting around it, because you have the Cadian stratagem, which allows you to basically move the full distance and count as if you've been stationary. So you know that's really quite effective as well. It's called shock troops, and it's 2 CP if you do it on a tank. So you can move your tank commander the full 10 inches. Normally you'd only get D6 shots for grinding advance, but then you go 2 CP, and now I count as being stationary, and I get my 2d6 demolisher cannon shots. So combining gifted commander with on one tank commander and then shock troops on another tank commander allows you to keep your Leman Russ tank commanders back safely and then push them forward and not suffer the penalty of only having a 24-inch range demolisher cannon. So hopefully that all makes sense, but I just wanted to mention that one little thing at the end, and like little PS, little addendum. Anyway, that's everything that I want to cover about these Warlord traits for now, guys. Overall, I think they're all solid. Like I've said, I think Steel Discipline, you can definitely build around it. It's a good middle tier choice. I think Gifted Commander is just really strong if you build your game plan around it. And I think Man Like a Fortress is potentially anti-meta, but unfortunately I think it's the weakest of the lot. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Let me know which one of these 3 traits you think you're going to be taking. Let me know if you think any of these are worth keeping over a tank edge trait. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. One last thing I want to mention before signing off. It may be last, but it's not least. In fact, you saved the best till last. I want to say a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart to all the current Mordian Glory Patreon supporters. It's thanks to my Patrons that I'm able to afford all the supplements on the day that they come out, look at them, do the in-depth review, analysis, all that kind of stuff, bring it back, bring that breakdown back and share it with you guys. It's thanks to their ongoing support that this channel has been able to stay on the cutting edge of the meta, going to various tournaments and bringing back important information from the front lines. So once again, massive thank you to all the Patreon supporters. If you're interested in joining the Patreon, there will be a link down in the description below. I don't do tiers or levels or anything like that. I just keep it super simple. All the money that you donate goes straight back into the Mordian Glory channel. I use it for going to tournaments. In fact, beginning of next year, I'm going to be using the Patreon money to go to Adepticon. I've never been to Adepticon before. It's a massive event, and it's thanks to the Patreon supporters that I'm able to afford to do that kind of thing. So, like I said, don't mess around with tiers or anything like that. It's if you want to throw $1 at me, you want to throw $20 at me, genuinely, I'm just grateful for any support that you guys can give. But anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.